This might be your last chance to buy a Moonbreon if you're ready to pay $1,000 or more. Because the Umbreon VMAX Alt Art from Evolving Skies is selling for that price, nearly double what it was selling for just 3 months ago. So is this just the beginning of an ever-increasing price, or is this just hype and FOMO? And I mean, I don't have a copy yet. What's a collector gonna do? Is the Moonbreon done mooning? I'm gonna break it down in this video so you can make the best decision with your hard-earned money. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TCG Buyers Club. My name's Gray, I buy cardboard, and I make collecting and investing in Pokemon simple. The Umbreon VMAX Alt Art, also known as the Moonbreon, is a secret rare chase card from Evolving Skies that has emerged as the dominant card from the Sword and Shield block. This card has always been expensive, but in recent months it's gotten really expensive. But you probably knew all of that. The question is the Moonbreon worth it? Clearly, there are people who think it is, because the card is selling multiple copies a day on TCG Player for right around that $1,000 mark. And on eBay, there are even more copies selling, with PSA 10 graded examples selling for a slight premium at around $1,300 US. And let's be clear, this is very expensive for a modern card. So what's going on here? There are a couple different scenarios that could be at play here, and I want to get the first one out of the way really quick. Some people in the hobby are speculating that these recent price moves are the result of price manipulation. This would be when an individual or a group of individuals are using a bunch of exploitive tactics that artificially drive short-term price appreciation. The specifics of these techniques are not very important right now, but what is this means artificial price appreciation that is likely to be very short-lived. And I'll be clear, this is certainly possible. And if you're interested in buying a copy of this card anytime soon, this is something to be aware of and to be careful of. But for this video, I kind of want to ignore this because, one, I am not an expert at this kind of market manipulation, and I don't want to misrepresent anything. And two, I just think the alternative is way more interesting to talk about, and that's actual organic appreciation of this card. Because it is possible that these price increases are driven entirely by organic demand. And if this is true, it does mean it's possible the price could keep appreciating, and that the best time to buy this card was, well, at least 3 months ago, but the second best time to buy this card is then today at the current prices. But I think a lot of experienced collectors are extremely hesitant at that prospect, because even if this growth is truly organic, it's still risky, and risk can be kind of hard to identify. So I'm going to do my best to break it down, explain what I think is going on, and demonstrate why this is a real concern for this card. And look, as usual, it just comes down to supply and demand. This Umbreon VMAX Alt Art is clearly the most popular card from the set, and the price clearly reflects this. So where's the risk? And to understand that, we actually need to focus in on the supply, because this is an extremely hard card to pull. I actually dove into some of Danny Phantom's old videos where he looked at the pull rates for Evolving Skies. And what he found in opening about 2,000 packs was that only 11 of them contained any Alt Art VMAX cards. That's about 1 in every 177 packs. But there are 6 different alternate art VMAX cards in this set. So if we assume your chance of pulling the Umbreon is identical to all those other VMAX Alt Arts, that makes pulling the Umbreon about a 1 in 1,000 pack chance. If we were to use a current market price of about $11 per booster pack, that means that you would need to spend $11,664 on packs to maybe pull that Umbreon. I mean, in that context, paying $1,000 to guarantee the card doesn't seem so bad, does it? The problem is, despite the incredibly hard pull rates for this card and the impression of rarity it creates, there's actually a ton of these printed. Sword and Shield cards saw a massive increase in print volumes, and Evolving Skies was not immune to that. On PSA, the card grading company, they've graded almost 15,000 copies of this card, and remarkably, over 11,000 of those cards are graded a perfect PSA 10, And on top of that, I mean, we know not every collector grades their cards. That just represents a portion of the total cards in circulation, and it's already an enormous number. And this is where we start to see the problems with this card. A card with these types of volumes isn't truly rare, and yet people are willing to pay much more for it than other cards with better fundamentals. I mean, let's look at some other modern cards to compare. In 2021, there were some other Umbreon chase cards that were released, and one that I want to look at is the Umbreon Gold Star from the Celebrations Classic collection. This is a beautiful, cool, interesting card. A lot of people are really excited about it. And if we look at PSA, there's currently a graded population of about 10,000 total. So in fact, that is 33% less than what we see for the Moonbreon. But I'll bet you can guess where this is going. This card does not sell for a premium over the Moonbreon. In fact, it is so far off that number. Singles are currently selling on TCG Player for about 15 bucks, and you can buy a PSA 10 graded example for less than 100. Now, look, I know there's a ton of factors that contribute to these prices, so this absolutely doesn't tell the whole story, but the contrast between the two cards does raise a few red flags to me when I think about the Moonbreon. Moving on, how about vintage cards? Many collectors would say vintage cards have better fundamentals, by which I mean they are older and typically rarer. So I'm just gonna pick a vintage card that I think is one of the coolest of all time. Shining Gyarados from Neo Revelations, released in 2001. This card is solidly about 23 years old. And if we look at condition, there's actually only 1,000 copies that have received a PSA 9 or greater, with the majority of those being the PSA 9. So let's compare this to just the 11,000 PSA 10 Moonbreons alone. This is clearly the rarer card, but the market price doesn't reflect that at all. You can buy a raw unlimited copy of this card on TCG Player for 350 bucks right now. And on eBay, PSA 9 graded examples sell for about 900 bucks. And so the conclusion is kind of clear, right? The difference in price for the Moonbreon comes down to one thing. It's the demand, and the demand is clearly enormous. So much so that it blows other modern cards of similar supply out of the water, and it's still more expensive than the older, rarer cards, which many collectors would tell you should carry more long-term value. And that could just be the end of the story. The demand is enormous, and the price reflects that. But demand is fickle, and therefore risky, because any price that is driven by such huge demand is exposed to that potential demand leaving. And this kind of demand trap has destroyed all kinds of collectible hobbies in the past. Things like Beanie Babies used to sell for thousands of dollars in the 90s, but since then, they've become the poster child for hype-driven collectible bubbles that burst. And most Beanie Babies are now really cheap, all because the demand went away. And look, I don't think Pokemon is gonna lose demand in a dramatic way anytime soon. But when we look at this specific card, we have to question whether or not this demand is sustainable over the long term, because sure, it's a beautiful card. It was rare and hard to pull from an extremely desirable set. It's got a lot of qualities going for it. But Pokemon releases amazing cards that are hard to pull all the time. Is it possible that over time, fewer people care about the Moonbreon like they do today? And look, honestly, I have no idea. And of course, none of this is financial advice. I am just a basement dweller who likes thinking way too much about the economics of trading cards. But what I wanted to do in this video was just explore some of the complicated factors that make up whether a price is reasonable in a collectibles hobby. All any collector can do is just do the best they can with the information they have and make the decision that makes the most sense for them. And unfortunately for me, it looks like I'm not going to be buying a Moonbreon anytime soon. But how about you? Do you already own a Moonbreon? Or if not, were you planning on buying one at current prices? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read them all, and I love being able to connect with all of you. And of course, if you like this kind of content and analysis, feel free to subscribe. It means a ton and really helps me out. Thank you so much for tuning in to the TCG Buyers Club. My name's Gray. I buy cardboard, and I'll see you in the next video.